facilities. We'll start with buildings and grounds and ask to pass the minutes of the last meeting. Can I have a motion by Evelyn, second by John. Any questions, changes, deletions?
No.
Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay, Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I can, I'll skip down to the item 5, Supreme Court Library update. They started their demolition last night. The contractor came around 2 o'clock and just started taping things off and making the place dust-proof. Anyway, they worked until about 10 last night. They got half the library mezzanine down. They've got about half the soffit around the outside wall in the library down. They cut one hole from the library out towards the main hallway where the windows are going to go in the temporary court space, just to see what they had there. All the taping, whatever they need to do there. They cut another hole, test hole, back towards the courtrooms for, they ran a ductwork out through that to make negative pressure to get the dust out of the area. So it went pretty smoothly. If everything goes the way it went last night, I don't see any problem at all with our 1-week deadline.
Any questions for Frank on that?
I think the only other thing I have today is the budget review.
Okay.
And if we could, Mr. Chairman, I think if we get through the normal business of airport, and then we'll come back and do the complete.
Both the budgets. Okay. Sure. Okay, Ross?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The treasurer wants to be heard from Michael.
Good morning. I just want to give the committee a quick update. Last Thursday, we sold the bonds for the first part of the edition for $8 million. We were projecting a 3.5% to 4% interest rate. We got it at 2.66%, which is roughly going to save us about $750,000 of interest over the course of the bond. What were the projections that we had made originally? I just wanted to update the committee on that. Any questions?
Any questions for Michael?
News.
Yeah, that's,
So that's fixed, it's not a floating rate?
That's a fixed
Yeah,
rate.
that's good.
20 years.
Yeah.
20-year note.
Yeah.
Now, we're starting out the first year with just an interest payment only, so that, because we're hoping by 17, when we free the nursing home, and we'll have some cash, available to make that payment, so it won't have a direct impact on the tax rate.
Then as this project moves forward, you'll anticipate the other phases and the
Yeah,
need?
when we get, I'm assuming that sometime near the end of 16, going into 17, we're gonna have to revisit this and see what we need to go further, as far as, how much money, whether we wanna do another bond or a band, short-term notes, whatever. But at that point in time, we'll have to address it again. But this should get us off the ground, it should give Jeff enough money to get a real good start on this.
Okay. All right, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, Ross?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item on the agenda is a resolution request to apply for a grant. This would be a New York State DOT Aviation Capital Grant. This is not an FAA grant, this is state only. This request carries with it a 10% local match. The intent of the project is to replace 2 of our old 6-bay T hangars out the airport. These are our 1940s vintage T hangars. I think many of you have seen them. Extremely poor condition, dirt floors, most of them. They are far overdue for replacement. On page 2 of your package is a resolution request. The total dollar amount involved would be $1 million. That would be to replace both 6-bay T hangars with 2 new 10-bay T hangars. The 10% local match is included in our 2016 CIP budget request. On page 3 of your packet is an enlarged section of our airport layout plan. The proposed location for the new T hangars is shown highlighted in yellow on your map. So it already has FAA approval for this location for these new T hangars. The existing hangars I X'd out in red on your map. Those are the hangars, the old hangars next to the fuel farm that we'd like to replace. We're looking, and on page 4 you can see a better satellite photograph to give you a better feeling of where this actually is located. We'd like to get a little bit of flexibility with the grant applications. Like to have a total dollar amount not to exceed $1 million, but, they didn't give us a lot of time. The applications are due November 3rd. So, we need to consult with our engineers and with the New York State DOT, see if we can't get the cost down as much as possible. The maximum grant application amount is $1 million, and there's only $7 million available for the whole state. So we may want to consider separating it over 2 grant applications, 1 grant application for 1 row of T-hangers, maybe another application for the other row, so we have a better chance of at least getting 1 row of T-hangers. Again, these hangers are in very poor condition and are in dire need of replacement.
So the new hangers are going here.
Yep, where the yellow is highlighted on the map.
Who would, make the decision on if we wanna split it up, the consultants?
Well, we could make that decision, based on what our final projections, our cost estimates are for the construction of these 2 hangars. They just received some information from Erected Tube, one of the premier suppliers of T-hangers in the country. Even this morning, they got the number down to maybe around $900,000 for both units. Still, that's a lot of money. It really depends on how much site preparation will be necessary. The existing site is all paved tie-down areas right now, so environmentally, the approval process should be very straightforward. There's no impact to soils. It's already impervious surfaces because it's already paved. So we think that, we can probably get the cost down a little bit more, but the intent really is if we split it up over 2 separate applications, 1 for each row of hangars, or 1 for 1 row and 1 for both, that we might have a better chance of at least getting 1 row, due to the cost. Again, the maximum being $1 million grant for any airport.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor, Evelyn, seconded by Ron. Discussion, Ron?
Have you cast these numbers into a business plan that basically, reflects, what you would anticipate the, income would be, on these new hangars over some period of time?
Yes,
And,
certainly. Yeah, well, I haven't put anything formal down on paper. I've looked at what the existing rents go for T-hangers and compared that to what our current revenue is on the old T-hangers. The old T-hangers, we're only collecting 3% of the revenue through the agreement with the FBO. The new T-hangers would be 100% revenue to the county. We would operate and manage those ourselves. We would collect 100% of the revenue. For example, the new T-hangers that Skimmerhorn built up on the north side of the airport, they're collecting about $315 a month. If we're looking at, 10 to 20 units, we're looking anywhere from $37,000 to $72,000 in revenue a year.
And they do payback on our 10% Ross would be a year and a half.
Yeah, I mean,
For 2
anywhere
years.
from 2 to 3 years, your payback would be regardless. Even if you build 2 rows and you only fill 1 of them, your payback's still less than 3 years. On your 10% share, I should say.
Our match is 10%.
Our match, on our 10% match, yep.
Yeah, I would like to, if you could, when you have that, in a spreadsheet form, some future meeting, maybe you could bring that to the meeting, we could take a look at it.
Certainly.
Get a sense of, what it means, financial.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is a resolution request to establish a capital project. This is to establish a project for the natural gas conversion project that we've been pursuing out at the airport. Currently, we don't have a project to move money into at this time. We've got the agreement with National Grid for the gas main. The county's gonna do the trenching. We already paid them for the gas main work that will be needed. We'd like to create this capital project so we can move forward with it in 2016, install the service lines, and whether or not National Grid installs the service lines or the county does it or there's some split, we need to establish the capital project to get this project rolling and moving forward in a timely manner.
Okay, questions? Motion to get it on the floor? By John, seconded by Fred. Any other discussion?
What's the heat now, is it oil?
It's mostly propane. There is, I think, one of our buildings is burning kerosene, because the tank is outside. not gonna put number 2 fuel oil outside. The rest of them are propane. So the conversion, some of the units will have to be replaced, they're old, inefficient. Some of the units can be converted to burn from propane to natural gas. And that's part of what this is intended to do, is not only bring the service lines to the buildings, but also convert the heating units over to burn natural gas.
How many meters are you talking about? Possible conversion meters?
We're, airport-wide, we're looking at approximately 13 gas meters. That's a combination of public and private gas meters at the airport. Some of our buildings, we can put them onto 1 meter, save some costs. Some of the buildings will need to be individually metered because they're leased out or could be leased out.
Okay. Any other discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Okay, thank you. On page 6 of your packet, I put a small table in there just to highlight some of the revenues that we've collected as far as Balloon Festival for this year, for 2015. Our donation collections are a little bit down this year. Sunday was a complete wash. We didn't really get any spectators coming through the gates on Sunday. We still did respectable, over $9,274 in VFW donation collections, and that's after their 10% cut for doing the collection. Our premium parking permit sales went up this year. We sold more permits. The revenue went up there. A little over $6,000 in cars. Buses, we sold 3 more passes than we did last year. They were 1-day passes. Our revenue, again, went up a little bit for our buses. We exceeded our budget projections for revenue for the Balloon Festival, so we've done quite well. Total collected is a little more than $16,900. Overall, the festival went well. As usual, traffic was a bear on Saturday night, but we had a great launch on Saturday morning. Really was perfect. Ideal weather conditions. Traffic went smooth, parking went smooth. So Saturday morning really was a fantastic day, 1 in 25. And we were very pleased that we had that success. So,
I'm glad I volunteered for that day.
yeah, it was good.
It worked out
It really
good.
was.
Ron?
Yeah, back on the hangars, is the long-term plan to demolish the old hangars?
Yes.
And then that area would be devoted to parking, to...
Yeah, that would be the intent, is to kind of flip-flop, move the tie-down parking where it is existing. That's where the new hangars would go. And then, ultimately, the old hangars would be demolished, paved over, and turned into tie-down parking itself. Could be used for future expansion, for additional hangar space if needed in the future. The options exist.
If the demand were there, wouldn't it make sense until we were ready to make a move that we could also lease that space? So in effect, it would be a doubling, or whatever, an increase in your, which might shorten your, that's what I'm saying, on your business plan. It would be interesting to see your business plan, because it might be possible to shorten the payback on this, keep them at least for a while, and kind of grow.
That'll depend on how we handle some of the maintenance issues with those hangars. Right now, we have some significant structural repairs that are necessary to support beams for those hangars. I don't know how much effort we really want to put into maintaining these and repairing these hangars.
Is there a demand, for example, for cold storage other than planes, that sort of thing? I mean, parts, that kind of thing. I mean, are there other opportunities to lease that space? But all of that you would give thought to, would be part of your...
Yeah, these buildings were transferred down from the Aviation Road site, so their expected longevity has gone far past. But there's also a critical issue. They feel that they're too close, safety-wise, to the fuel farm, and there's a need to have that transition and open up that space so they're in the future.
Yeah, we got a blind corner there.
The other thing I'll add is, our goal would be to hash that out with the next FBO lease. And so the construction of the new hangars would proceed as quickly as possible. And then as we get closer to the renewal for the FBO lease, that will have to be worked out. Because right now, the FBO has control of those. As Ross mentioned, FBO collects 97% of those revenues on the county-owned hangars. And so that would have to be sorted out if those things are viable into the future.
Right.
So you'd be eliminating the tie-down area, you're gonna create a new tie-down area someplace? The old T hangers now?
Ultimately, yeah, the old T hangers will become that replacement tie-down space as needed, yep. And there is existing space out in the main ramp as well, so if we need to displace some tenants over to the main area, there is, which we usually use for transient parking in the summertime. There is parking though for our existing customers.
Supervisor Brock?
Are these old hangers structurally sound? I mean, the way you're talking, I almost get the sense that they're like if we had something.
Well, we've had engineering take a look at them, they've, put together a report, we don't believe that they're in danger of an imminent collapse or imminent failure, but they are definitely in need of significant repairs. They would require us to, cut the bottom of the support columns off and weld new bottoms onto these hangers. And they are on little concrete footers and the rest is all gravel. The snow, ice accumulates and the water, they sit in water and sand. And they're just been there a very long time and they're very poor condition and, again, I don't think they're in danger of any kind of imminent collapse.
That's the Opera House, that place there.
But we're not proposing just slapping a new roof on the building at all.
Right.
Okay, any other discussion? All right.
Okay, lastly, I just wanted to, let the committee know, let the members of the audience know that the Young Eagles are going to be hosting an event, on Saturday, October 3rd, with a rain date of Sunday, October 4th. This is the opportunity for children ages 8 to 17 to get a free ride in an aircraft from any one of our local pilots. The weather actually does not look so great right now in the forecast for Saturday, bear that in mind, but I wanted to get this information out, let everybody know that this is a great opportunity for some children to get involved in aviation and hopefully spark some interest.
Well, back in the old days,
Yeah?
back in the old days, we used to, I think it was Kiwanis, did a penny a pound. So we were, and it was aimed at kids and stuff. And, just more than one parent came up and said, "Where's the pilot?" And I was like 17. They never walked away, but they always got in the plane, we went for a ride, but they were always a little bit, but anyhow, that was fun those days. But that seems like a great thing to get young people going.
Is that it, Rob?
That's it.
Thank you. They charge, do they not?
That's free.
Okay. Any other
You're too old, John.
business come before airport and/or grounds, buildings and grounds? If not, we'll move on to the budget review.
Okay. Give me a minute to pass out, which ones?
So John, is that the reaction you got when?
Did it change, or did I just totally mess it up? Totally messed it up.
Yeah, Jim, it's about the same.
It's a hard one. I teach till 9. Sorry. Thank you for telling me. I'm gonna move over here though. This chair is way too high. Alright. I know. That's supposed to be.
Where's the AV?
It's on
slide for everybody.
Yeah, we didn't make extra copies for, supervisors not on the committees unless they requested them, but I am gonna pull it up so we can go through, item by item if necessary. Let's see. Here's our summary page. It should be in the front of each of the budget books, whether you have a complete one. If, for supervisors that are on both facilities and public works, we gave you the fatter packet of, both budgets. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll go through the A codes that are under, both, Frank's and Ross's, budget codes. And on each of those, the first few pages are the summary pages. And just to orient you, we've got 2014 actual, 2015 amended and actual, and then the 2016 request is this column here. So you'll see some of the adjustments on the side of whether they are above or below last year's amended budgets. So if we start off, what we can start off with is really the 1620 code is our facilities, our first facilities code. You may have a DPW admin in your binder, but we'll cover that during DPW. So my intent here is to go based on the summary pages, unless someone has specific questions on particular budget codes as we go through. Okay, so 1620 is the municipal center. So this is the code that covers all of the municipal center expenses, and then a lot of the general expenses for the entire campus. See, the bulk of our decreases in our contractual costs. We're anticipating some utility savings next year, in part because of the Constellation contract. This is our revenue page. We are anticipating some increases in revenue through additional court space, right, Frank? And also public health has expanded. We've moved a wall of public health. That's a minor increase in revenue. Okay, salaries generally constant with the minor increases in union raises. You can see our decrease in electricity, what we're anticipating from the Constellation contract. So this year we had an amended budget of 198. We spent 105 already, but we're anticipating a decrease to 168.
Jeff?
Yes.
The decline in revenue on 14 actual as opposed to what you're indicating as revenue in 16, you show 1,073,425 in 14. That would be actual collected, and then you show in 16, you show 859,488. Is that correct?
Right.
So, and that would be explained basically by.
Well, there's one code here, the sale of real property, and remember where that came from, Frank? In 2014, what did we sell?
I'm not sure.
remember that one, Betsy?
The only reason I bring that up is that if you look at, generally speaking, your revenue against expense, you've been running, like in your actual in 14 would have been shy of 400,000, 300 and some odd thousand dollars net. Just trying to evaluate what the net expense to the county budget's going to be in what you're projecting for next year is what I'm
Right.
interested in.
The majority of the revenue is maintenance in lieu of rent for the courts. And also, we charge some of the other departments that get reimbursed, like social services is a different building, that's 1624, but public health in this building and courts in this building, right? Those are the bulk of the revenues. And what ends up happening is we typically max those out to the maximum of what they will pay. And they don't cover all of the expenses because the majority of departments in the building don't pay a rent to Frank's budget. So we have additional expenses that don't incur a revenue.
Just saying that if the requested expenditure appropriation plan is $1,527,170 for 16, and which is a decrease of approximately $100,000 over the 15 amended budget, but the revenue is going to be going down by as much as then the net cost to the county is going up
Yes.
a couple $100,000 in 1 year, and that's my concern. And it
Mhm.
appears to be largely attributable to, not on the expenditure plan so much, but in the decline in that revenue. So we don't need to resolve it today, but I just
Yeah, I can-
ask you to take a closer look
I can
at
take
that.
a look, I mean, this is 200 grand of it right here, this sale of real property.
Yeah, I see that.
And I don't recall what we sold in 2014, frankly, or if it was a prior sale that finally hit the books in 2014.
The only thing I can think of is the WIC building and the detention home, there is a 2-year lapse in maintenance in lieu of rent. It wouldn't be $200,000, but, when we bill that, we're actually billing on last year's actual expenditures, so
Right.
it takes a while for it to show up.
Well, that would, but then, if that were the case, then, my reading of that would be that, the good news is we had $200,000 of non-recurring revenue. The bad news is that it's non-recurring revenue. So, that would explain, you see what I'm saying? That would explain the variance in the net cost to the county. That's my only point here.
Right, yeah, you can see the majority of the other revenues remain pretty constant. Obviously, there'll be a lot of changes in 2017 once the new court building and the court expansion is opened. That revenue will go up, but then we'll also need to be adding expense probably for additional cleaners at a minimum, and perhaps an additional day staff. But Frank sits with courts and social services and public health each summer and kind of generates what we're anticipating for those maintenance in lieu of rents. And some of the jostling between the codes is to make sure we're accounting for proper expenses and we're able to maximize. But even those maintenance in lieu of rent revenues from state agencies and from court agencies don't cover all of our real expenses. But we are maximizing them. Any other questions on 1620?
Rachel?
I do, Jeff, if you don't mind. Under, I just have two quick ones. Under 418, under 1620 for insurance general liability, in the past years, that's always been 0, not just 14,
Yeah.
but also 13 and 12. What changed that we're now seeing that you can
It was an accounting change, and Betsy and I talked about it, and we distribute it now among the codes. It used to be all in one code, so it wasn't a true accounting. So what Betsy did was prorate it based on the total budget for each of the various departmental codes, so that each of the buildings has a piece of that. There was no, you know what the net increase or decrease was in that liability insurance? We get the numbers from self-insurance, and then Betsy prorated it by the budget to split it apart, rather than carry it under one bulk code.
Okay, And then my other question is really minor, but on 465 under road bridge materials, when I look at previous years, I'm seeing that there wasn't any amount allocated. In 2012, 2013, and 2014, you're at 129. You're up to 1,000 in your request for 2016. I just wonder, I mean, this is pretty big percentage-wise.
For 465.
Yeah.
That goes into, topsoil, stone, and asphalt to patch holes. We did an estimate for the budget team to mill and pave this back lot. Well, this is the lot we call the supervisor's lot. I think we estimated it at, what was it, Kevin, 80 or 100,000?
Close to 100,000.
Yeah, to mill and pave that, but right now that's not in the budget. We're anticipating just a continued, asphalt patches, asphalt repairs.
So that's what ramp repair means.
Yes. You know, frankly, in the past, highway crews would come over, it would come out of highway budget, and we'd spend all sorts of money over here patching holes. And we're trying to do a better job of accounting for what is not highway, and actually encumbering asphalt costs and other material like topsoil and other things that we do every year directly to the codes that are using them.
So it's just an improvement in the accounting, why for years past we're seeing zero or a minimal amount, and now it's correctly affiliated to each line item under.
Yeah, and we've used the code in the past, it's just been for a load of topsoil or
No, I
something
get it.
like that. That's kind of a general, that road and bridge materials catches aggregate, you know, asphalt, you know, just general construction materials for our exterior. Concrete would fall under there too, concrete patching and stuff. And then again, the one that was brought up here, this liability, that's the code that we prorated right there, that 418. So this will be a recurring thing, all morning we'll have that code, it'll go from 0 to some big number, and that's what it is. Any other questions on 1620, that's the municipal center? Okay. Of course, we have the benefits. This is, building 11 is this is the WIC and detention home buildings. And we accounted for adding them onto the grid this year, in 2016, because with the sale of Westmount, those are currently fed off of the cogen, and with the sale of Westmount, we'll need to put them back on the grid, so we don't think it's gonna be that expensive. We just put a number in there of $1,000 to account for any additional, work related to that. So that's the code. So to keep those buildings kind of just, they're on hold, they're basically mothballed at this point, for future use or future work. But that's why we put that money in there. Doug?
Thanks, Jim. Just had a couple of questions, Jeff. Sorry to back up just a hair. Page 20 of 59, if you can jump to that. Our water sewer taxes, we spent 2014 about 35,000, just under 36,000 actually. And we're budgeting 50,000 this year, so I'm just curious why would we budget $14,000 more? We actually paid just a year.
We confirm those with the town, right? That's it.
Kind of, he's ready to give it to you again?
Well, I didn't say that, but we do get our numbers from them as an estimate. And you're talking about under 1620 water sewer taxes?
Yes, yeah, I was just wondering, I looked at 2014, it's 35,853, and this year we budgeted 50,000.
That's just to date.
It's, yeah, that's.
No, I know, but the actual amount for the whole year of 2014.
Actual to date.
Yeah, it's 36,000,
Right.
I understand that.
And our 14 actual was that 36,000, but we're anticipating that to go up. We have another
We
payment.
did a readjust it from,
Using a lot more water, or using a higher sewer tax?
Oh, this is another, okay, but this one's specific to 16.
Did the reassessment have an impact?
oh, I don't know.
We can take a look at that,
Please?
yes, and just confirm with the town that we're accounting for it properly for this campus. just note that.
Thank you, if you check that. There's one other one, that's a minor one, 423, telephone usage. We paid 2,000 approximately in 2014, we're budgeting an extra $1,000 this year. Are our telephone costs going up significantly in the county, airport, or?
This is specific to buildings and grounds, but the majority of those costs end up being to IT, right, for our hardline phones, and then the rest is our cell phones. So some of the expenses have varied over the years with our cell phone, expenses for all the day crew primarily, and our night crew foremen.
Right, but hasn't that always been the case?
Yeah, but I guess it's one of those items that hasn't been getting cheaper for us.
Okay. Because 2014 to 2015 is only 1,200 actual. Is this through the end of August, by the way, Jeff? I didn't have a date on this.
I think it was through July 31st.
July 31st, okay, all right.
Does
And that most
December
likely will
17th.
amount to another 2,000 a year, so it just seems like we could throw an extra 1,000 in there.
Alarm monitoring comes out of telephone.
Oh, Frank's telling me alarm monitoring comes out of there as well.
There have been increases in the amount of alarms, panic buttons, that type of thing that we've installed.
When did we install this, Frank?
As recently as a couple months ago, we put another one in the WIC area. DMV has them, district attorney has them. We're still monitoring across the road, which comes through this code. So there have been a few increases. It's not a huge amount of money to Mahoney, for instance, but
It's not a big, it's not a lot of money, but it's just something that comes in a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, any other 1620s? All right, we'll go back through the annex. Okay, this is the municipal center annex, which is gone. It's the building that's gone. However, there's still a payment to, this is the remainder of the cogen,
Line hookup.
the line hookup for cogen. So this is the annex building that was demoed a few years back. But this charge here is the remainder of the cogen hookup that had been being paid little by little over the years. Now that Westmount is being sold, after the first of the year, that final payment will be made. Okay, 1624 is the Human Services Building on the south side of the campus. You see our summary here, some, majority of our increases are under our employee benefits, and some of the employee salaries. Our other costs are remaining constant or a little bit down, mostly because of the electrical cost adjustment. Any questions on the point ones or point twos? We haven't, you can see we're pretty much flat on any new furnishings or anything necessary for the building. And then now we're getting into our point fours. See our anticipated decrease in electricity, and other than that, the costs remain constant. Any questions on 1624? Okay. We can either stick with facilities right now or jump to airport. I can kind of jump around if you want.
It's all gotta be
There's a couple
plowed.
other facility codes that actually we'll be covering under
And
DPW.
we,
So we're ready to go to airport now.
how many more are left? Because maybe that would free up Frank. I know
We've got all of Frank's codes taken care of, right? Yeah.
So you're set, Frank? You can be excused, unless you wanna see right through this.
Very happy to leave.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay, here's our, airport code. You see we've got some decreases, and some of our anticipated decreases are in some of the interfund charges, that we've been charging the airport that we reevaluated. Here's our revenues. We did adjust some of the revenues, some for some increased revenues that we're anticipating related to the balloon festival. And we had, talked to committee about, I think we've talked to committee, haven't we? Maybe we haven't talked to committee about charging the RVers on the upper hill. And we've already talked to the RV club, so we've given them a heads up so that they can put it out to their membership, but we're gonna generate an extra $1,000 there. And then we've got some additional revenues we're anticipating with parking off of the runway 30 end, where, after the first of the year, we'll be acquiring some additional lands on the runway 30 end for aviation purposes, but those lands can be used for additional parking. And then, this also reflects an increase to the FAA lease rate, and, which was approved through committee a few months ago, or a couple months ago, and then also increased revenue with the new restaurant. The structure of that, was a little bit different with the land lease, charges, and then also the percentage of revenue has increased from what was the original Carol's Cafe, along with, we think that there's gonna be additional business there, having the entire restaurant with additional seating.
Travis?
In regards to the Balloon Fest, there are expenses paid by, like, EDC people, I believe, for propane for the, and just things that they, encourage the balloons to come here, is that true? Not under your bill, but under
Yeah.
under EDC type.
Frankly, I don't know what other revenues they have. I mean, the expenses that we cover are the ones that we try and recoup the revenue on, which are primarily, the overtime for DPW, staff across all divisions, to man the parking areas and man the runways to keep everything safe and protect the infrastructure. And other than that, we have some food expense related to our personnel, and those are the only true expenses that we're covering.
The trash removal.
Trash removal. So few dumpsters full of trash is covered under our codes. But I know Balloon Fest, their committee generates revenue from a whole bunch of different sources, including private donors sponsoring balloons and other agencies, but as well as OCTAX. I think they get OCTAX, but that's not funneled through us at all.
That was just my point, that there are other places in the county budget where money is going into the Balloon Fest. We're recovering some of it here. That was just my point.
Okay, any other questions on revenue? Okay, on the expense side, you'll see our salaries remain constant with the exception of some union raises. And our other .2 codes down a little bit, but remain pretty constant with just general equipment and tools. Our .4s remain pretty constant. We did do some adjusting on our natural gas codes. We're hoping to get a couple of the heaters transferred over to natural gas this fall. So all we did was we split our money for fuel oil and put some in natural gas, and then also reduced our oil. You'll see oil and gas heating we reduced about 10,000, and we increased gas by about 10,000. And the reason that we haven't generated a savings as yet, because we're not sure how far we're gonna get in 2016. with the conversions. And we may only get a partial year, end of 2016. So we didn't assume that we were gonna be generating savings, right off, but we just split between the two fuel sources. The other code you'll see that we decreased was our interfund charges back to our machinery fund. And when we started looking at the primary airport equipment and especially the expensive stuff, like the snow blower, which is about a $600,000 unit.
400, yeah.
400. We've got a fire truck out there that's a $700,000 unit, and the main sweeper and all of the FAA airport-specific equipment. When we calculate our equipment rates, we deducted out of them the replacement costs because those are FAA eligible. And so we've reduced that equipment rental charge to be fair to the airport budget, where our other interfund charges with our primarily highway division has the most equipment by far. Those costs include a replacement cost as well as an annual chargeback.
Supervisor Brock?
Hey, Jeff, are you saying that, did I understand you, we have our own fire truck, or do we rent one?
We have a airport fire and rescue vehicle, yeah.
Who mans that during the?
Yeah, we have 2 airport maintenance workers that are trained in aircraft rescue firefighting. They're on staff, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week.
Be on call.
Yeah, and they're on call. If there's an emergency, of course, they'll respond to the airport and work with mutual aid in the event of emergency.
On to the rest of the .4s. Our telephone costs primarily on this page. Internet costs. I think we budgeted, keeping that pretty tight. Minor fees and expenses. The travel expenses are remaining constant. Foods cover our snow and ice response, and then also the Balloon Fest food costs, which we recoup a bunch of that back through revenue. And then our road and bridge materials, again, that code goes to asphalt repairs primarily, or aggregate, stone and asphalt. As well as we do crack sealing, right, the rubber crack sealing blocks, we get out of that code. Contractual charges, a lot of these are interfund charges back to, that are revenues on the highway side. And for years, that was something that the airport wasn't truly expensed for highway personnel assisting with snow and ice operations, and we do that now, so that's a code that's really in recent years has gone way up, but it's a revenue over to the highway department for any time highway personnel are spending at the airport. And then we have our benefits codes. Any questions on airport? Here's the airport staff. And then the rest of the buildings and ground staff. That's the whole thing. Okay. Any questions?
Assuming that retirees hospitalization is actually, the legacy insurance.
Yes. Okay, if you're good, Chairman, we can move on to, well, that's all I have, I guess, for facilities budget.
You have anything else, Vincent? Any other questions?
Gene's not here yet for buildings, or
Ah.
for, Public Works would be next, but Gene's not here yet.
Okay, any other business come before the committee? Hearing none, motion to adjourn. Evelyn, second by Fred. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Betsy.
Need an action on
Hey,
it?
Fred.